If an Aquarius goes quiet, something has already ended. Not the conversation, not the argument, not the relationship you still believe is hanging on by a thread. What ended is the future they once imagined with you in it. And that's the part most people never realize until it's far too late. Because silence feels harmless. Silence feels temporary. Silence feels like something that can be fixed later with the right words at the right moment. But with Aquarius, silence is not a pause. It's a conclusion. Most people assume Aquarius stops talking because they're tired, because they're overwhelmed, because they don't care enough anymore to keep fighting. That assumption is comforting, because as long as you believe they're just tired, you can believe there's still time. As long as you believe they don't care, you can believe nothing important was lost. But Aquarius doesn't go quiet when they lose. They go quiet when they've already seen how this ends. And once they've seen the ending, there's no reason to keep acting inside a story that no longer changes. To understand this, you have to understand how Aquarius actually thinks. Aquarius doesn't argue to win. They don't debate to dominate. They don't challenge people to prove superiority. They argue to observe. Every disagreement is a test run. Every pushback is a simulation. Every uncomfortable question is a way to map the future before it arrives. They're not asking, "How do I convince you?" They're asking, "If I stay here, where does this realistically lead?" That's why conversations with an Aquarius feel different. They don't explode emotionally. They don't spiral. They don't fight to release feelings. They stay strangely focused. They want to see how you think when you're challenged, how you respond when your self-image is threatened, how you behave when reality doesn't align with the version of yourself you describe. To you, it feels like conflict. To Aquarius, it's data. An Aquarius is always collecting data. They notice patterns other people dismiss. Not just what you say, but when you say it. What you defend too quickly. What you avoid completely. What never actually changes, no matter how many talks happen. At first, they engage fully. They ask questions. They challenge assumptions. They push back where others would stay quiet to keep the peace. That phase is not hostility. It's investment. Aquarius only invests that kind of mental energy into people and situations they believe still have a future. But eventually, something shifts. The questions slow down. The challenges stop. The debates fade. And the silence begins. This is the most dangerous moment, and most people completely misread it. They think the silence means Aquarius finally calmed down. They think it means the conflict is resolved. They think it means peace. But that's not peace. That's withdrawal. Aquarius doesn't give up emotionally. They disconnect logically. And logic takes time. Which means by the time you notice their silence, the decision has already been forming far longer than you realize. There were signs. The conversations you found unnecessary. The questions you felt were repetitive. The moments you accused them of overthinking. Those weren't flaws. Those were early warnings. Aquarius doesn't announce their exit. They don't threaten to leave. They don't beg for change. They don't deliver emotional speeches explaining how much they're hurting. They simply stop investing energy into a future they no longer believe in. That's why their silence feels so unsettling. Because nothing appears obviously wrong. They're still polite, still composed, still present, at least on the surface. But internally, something fundamental has ended. They've stepped out of the role. They're no longer a participant in the story. They're an observer. And once Aquarius becomes an observer, the ending is already locked in. When Aquarius sees the ending, it doesn't mean drama. It doesn't mean betrayal. It doesn't mean a sudden explosion. Most of the time, the ending they see is quiet. They see stagnation. They see the same arguments repeating in new disguises. The same apologies without structural change. The same promises that never turn into behavior. They see a system that no longer evolves. And Aquarius cannot survive inside a system that has stopped evolving. Not because they crave chaos. Not because they're restless for no reason. But because predictability without growth feels like suffocation. Aquarius can handle uncertainty. They can handle instability. They can handle pain. What they can't tolerate is inevitability. The moment they realize that no matter how many conversations happen, the core dynamic stays the same, something inside them goes quiet. That silence is not emptiness. It's clarity. And clarity is cold. Here's the cruel irony. When Aquarius stops arguing, many people feel relief. They think, finally, things are calmer. They think, we made it through the hard part. They think, this is getting better. But the hard part already happened. You just didn't recognize it. Because Aquarius processes endings privately. They detach internally. They grieve internally. They resolve internally. Long before anything looks different on the outside. By the time the silence arrives, the emotional work is already done. That's why their departure feels sudden to you and inevitable to them. You're standing at the beginning of the ending. They're already past it. This difference in timing is where the real pain lives. You want one more conversation, one more explanation, one more chance to fix it. Aquarius already knows how that conversation goes. They know who interrupts. They know who becomes defensive. They know who promises change and who returns to old patterns. They've already heard the entire dialogue in their head. So when they don't respond, it's not because they don't care. It's because nothing new is being introduced into the system, and repeating known outcomes feels pointless to them. Aquarius doesn't need closure. They don't need validation. They don't need to be proven right. They don't even need you to understand them. Understanding doesn't change trajectories. Only transformation does. And if transformation hasn't happened by the time silence arrives, Aquarius knows it won't. That's why they don't warn you one last time. They already warned you. Through questions you dismissed. Through resistance you misunderstood. Through challenges you found exhausting. Silence is simply the moment they stop translating. And this is the part that hurts the most. Aquarius doesn't disappear because they don't care. They disappear because they care enough not to lie to themselves about the future. Staying would require pretending. Explaining would require reopening closed systems. Arguing would require delaying an outcome they've already accepted. So they choose integrity over comfort. And integrity doesn't make noise. That's why, when you finally understand what their silence meant, they're already emotionally unavailable to explain it. Not because they're cruel, not because they're heartless, but because moving backward violates how they survive. Aquarius is always oriented toward what's next, even when it looks like they've stopped. So if an Aquarius has gone quiet in your life, don't assume you've won. Don't assume they're weak. Don't assume they'll come back if you wait long enough. Understand this instead. They saw where this was going, and they chose not to be there when it arrived. If this made something click, if it gave language to a feeling you've carried without understanding it, take a moment. Like the video. Share it with someone who might recognize themselves in this silence. And subscribe, because some truths don't arrive loudly. They arrive quietly. And only the people who listen early understand what that silence really means.